one of the greatest shooters this game has ever seen. Bad for him, bad for the league, bad for us not to see him out there. It's a damn shame. Damn! I thought I was going to see the Warriors in the conference finals at the very least. Damn.
Someone who you did a great sit-down interview with, LaMelo Ball, went number 3 to the Hornets. What do you think about that fit and what he brings to Charlotte?
You know how much I stress this, family. It ain't necessarily where you go. It's when you get there. And I think this is a terrific landing spot for him because Graham became a playmaker for Charlotte last year. Now both of those guys can handle those responsibilities of ball handling, creating. You have a couple of bigs that are finishers in P.J. Washington and Miles Bridges that are going to benefit off the pick and roll ability of LaMelo Ball. And then just playing in Charlotte, hopefully he becomes a superstar caliber player that now creates some relevancy in that market.
I like this for him because it gives him a lot of room to breathe. They've got Terry Rozier and, as you mentioned, Graham in the backcourt, but he's going to find some minutes there. He's going to get some time to really shine and sort of like not be in the confines of an offense with a lot of scorers around him. Hopefully this will work out for him. I'm predicting big production from him and a Rookie of the Year because he is, as you mentioned, such a good spot for him. Now, Jalen, as the night went on, there was a couple things that were interesting, but who are some picks a little bit later on in the draft that you really liked? I'm going to start with mine, Cole Anthony to the Magic. Now, you remember coming out of high school, Cole Anthony was ranked one of the top players, and I think much like it's one of those players that slipped because of an injury in college. However, he is going to produce really, really well. I love him in Orlando. Who did you like later in the draft?
I love Cole Anthony. Shout out to my brother Greg, his father. I believe this draft was unique overall, Jacoby, because when you look at the lottery, you don't see players from Duke and Kentucky and UNC and Kansas. My sleepers, one in the East, is the Atlanta Hawks and what they were able to do in the draft, but also in the West, Jalen Smith of the Phoenix Suns. We talked about Chris Paul to go with Devin Booker and the young wings that they have along with Ayton. But that young man right there is going to bring a level of physicality and also shooting to the big man spot in Phoenix. Both of those squads, to me, Phoenix and Atlanta, are both teams in their conference that did not make the playoffs this previous year that I anticipate now, based on how they drafted over the last couple of years and the development of the players on their roster, will firmly entrench themselves into the playoffs this year.
And both Smith for the Suns and Okongwu for the Hawks enter a position where they're not going to be asked to start and take the load because they've got Ayton in Phoenix, and then they've got Clint Capella, who a lot of people forget is on the Hawks. He just didn't play last year and didn't go to the bubble, but they come into really good situations. Those are our 3 sleepers, but there's other things that happened around the draft, but not necessarily in the draft. There's a lot of movement on the roster of the Philadelphia 76ers. We all thought that Al Horford had an untradeable contract. Well, guess what? That's not the case. He was traded to OKC for Danny Green. They also made a move and got Seth Curry. They're adding Green and Curry some much-needed shooting to the 76ers. What do you think about their moves last night?
The Sixers had a terrific night. I agree with you. And one of the things I must do is bring a level of objectivity to this game. And Daryl Morey is well liked amongst multiple people who do what we do for a living. I could probably say he's done better so far with the Sixers than he did his entire time with the Rockets. How about that, Jacoby? Because if you look back at what he did in Houston, that situation is actually a mess. And they lost their head coach and Mike D'Antoni. As opposed to the Philadelphia 76ers, you talked about freeing that salary cap space with Al Horford, trading Josh, getting shooting as Seth Curry. Danny Green is a 3-and-D kind of guy with championship level experience. But anything that takes place in Philadelphia ultimately is going to hamper. Anything that takes place in Philadelphia is going to be predicated on 2 people. Is Ben Simmons going to be able to make shots outside of the paint? And is Joel Embiid going to be able to stay healthy? We know that he's going to miss games throughout the regular season. But the last 2 years, once they got to the playoffs, Embiid also missed playoff games. So that's going to be crucial. Those 2 guys are still going to be the anchor to what they're trying to do. but I think Tobias Harris is going to be a player that flourishes with Doc Rivers as the head coach.
Well, Doc Rivers famously had Austin Rivers on his roster, and now he's got Seth Curry, who most people know but some may not, is Doc Rivers' son-in-law. So he's now had his son and now his son-in-law on his team in the past handful of years. I really think that when you look at the Sixers roster, one thing that they are missing is shooting, and they get that with Green and Curry. I really think that was smart for them. And Richardson sort of played great in Miami, and when they acquired Richardson, I really thought that he would be a 3-and-D type player. Didn't really work out that way in Philly, and I think that they did some good moves here. But one thing we need to mention is what Sam Presti is doing in Oklahoma City. Just look at the picks that this man has amassed. Just look at all these picks. For the next 5 years, they're going to be drafting, if they keep these picks, so many first-round picks. All I know is this, is the Oklahoma City G League team is going to be the best G League team in the history of the G League. If I was on the G League roster right now, I would be very concerned about all the first-round picks that are coming into the system.
One thing I want to say about Daryl Morey and Sam Presti, both of those guys, again, are terrific general managers. And you're going to hear a lot of people parrot the Oklahoma City Thunder having all of those draft picks. But here's what I'll say to you. What would you consider success with those picks? Because I've looked at their team over the last decade, and I don't believe any of those guys are going to be better than Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Paul George, Victor Oladipo. So what are we calling success in OKC?
So
what are we calling
to
success in OKC?
So you and I both know that draft picks are overrated and picks don't play. Success to me is trading those picks for superstar players. That's success if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder. You shouldn't be drafting any of those picks. Just like you amass those, they call them trade assets. Use those assets and turn them into actual established players. That would be success for those picks for Oklahoma City. Now, we do have to mention that the Sixers did draft guest on our show, Tyrese Maxey. So they added Curry, they added Maxey, and they added Green. Shout to Tyrese getting drafted right here. I think that was part of the good night for the 76ers. If I'm a Sixers fan, I definitely feel better today than I did about my team 48 hours ago. Shout to Tyrese Maxey. Now, something else happened. There's all this trades and roster changes and draft picks, but quietly in the background, Bogdan Bogdanović.